So, a new FNAF DLC is out, and it's about security breach, and it's the Ruin DLC. Guess I have to return from my break. After covering nearly every DLC concept made by the FNAF community, and even predicting what the Ruin DLC will hold for the game in 2023, the official trailer had details very close to what was predicted in the past videos I explored. So let's see how close the community actually came to guessing what the Ruin DLC would contain over a year ago, and see if any of these comparisons could predict what will happen next. But before we start, with that out of the way, we can begin. It is clear that this DLC is set after the burning down of the Pizzaplex during the Afton ending, and Gregory is trapped under the rubble. There is always a possibility with FNAF to keep in mind that this could be a prequel, and the Pizzaplex we see in the trailer is done up before the events of Security Breach. But considering the animatronics have sustained consistent damage to what happened in Security Breach, it seems unlikely, and we will assume that it is definitely a sequel for this video. While covering the Aftermath DLC in part 2 of this series, it was predicted that Gregory would return to the Pizzaplex after it was destroyed. In this case, we were wrong. It is instead Cassie, or the child from the teaser, who was not known about at the time, and is very important later in this video. Apart from this, the prediction that the character would be chased through the rubble of the collapsed building by husks was almost word for word predicted back then. With him returning, Gregory tries to escape, being hunted by charred husks of the animatronics through the rubble of the collapsed building. I personally love that Stillwell has done exactly this. Apart from the Technician DLC, which I cover more in this video, the Aftermath DLC was a personal favourite for the horror and mystery it provided, just like the previous games, as well as expanding on the story originally told in Security Breach. Moving on to the overall design of the Pizzaplex and animatronics, it is clear that Stillwell has made this DLC with horror at its forefront, particularly with Eclipse, an animatronic I actually accidentally predicted by putting it on the thumbnail of my very first video on the topic, which is kinda cool. This, along with what looks like Monty's new death animation, is pretty much exactly what was predicted by the horror DLC. A boring name, but still a really interesting concept. Actually, looking back in the series, the horror DLC has been a big part of a lot of concepts, to add the much needed horror requested by the community to the game. Make this DLC very much horror oriented, a chase through the rubble of the Pizzaplex by damaged, melted and corrupted animatronics. To add an extra level of detail, the animatronics could be retextured to take on a more nightmarish appearance, and this is for good reason. Security Breach was pretty underwhelming when it came to horror on original release, only being slightly scary at areas like the daycare and the endo hallways, mainly because it was dark and gloomy in these parts, rather than... But it looks like Stillwell has doubled down on horror here, which is great to see. Something that really made this prediction similar to the actual trailer was a previously scrapped chase scene from Moon through the staff tunnels. For Horror Bro, he discovered a removed scene in the game files which included a Moon animation. This scrapped content could be reintroduced in a future DLC where we could get a more horror-oriented chase scene from Moon through the staff tunnel. And with Eclipse's creepiness now, it would be the perfect opportunity for a dedicated part of this DLC to go to him as a fan favourite. Actually, as I was recording this footage, I found someone predicted with certainty that Eclipse would be in the next DLC, and then refused to elaborate when I asked how they knew. An impressive guess by Seekchan_Kit, I have no idea how they did it. But that covers the most obvious two DLCs that, while fairly general, did very accurately predict the basis of the DLC months before even the teaser was released. But the teaser added some subtle details that seemed to point towards a Choose Your Guardian style of DLC. This is where you would get to choose an animatronic that would help you in your escape, each with special abilities, missions, and areas to make the experience different. But how does this relate to the Ruin teaser? I noticed that there was a focus on individual animatronics. The use of Roxanne's walkie-talkie and the player only seeing one animatronic at a time, for example. This, when compared to Security Breach's trailer where they're shown as a collective, seems to indicate the player will be able to select their story. I imagine it will be similar to choosing between Monty Golf or Phaser Blast in the original game. Another small detail noticed was here. Roxanne appears to be taken aback by Cassie placing her hand on her. It is a small detail, but it shows something other than aggression, which I think is an important detail to note. And while it may not be exactly what was originally imagined by the community, I think the teaser has aspects of the Choose Your Guardian DLC. So after all of this, did we guess what the DLC would be? Kind of. Out of the 17 DLCs we have covered, the teaser showed close similarities to 2 of them and aspects of one other. But what could this mean for the Ruin DLC based on these and what we now know? Well, the Aftermath DLC simply predicts Burntrap survived the collapsing Pizzaplex. This is because the blob is crushed instead, acting as a shield and protecting him. He then has the animatronics, including Freddy, turn on Gregory as he tries to escape. I've already heard speculation that Gregory's voice is Burntrap leading Cassie into the wreckage for unknown reasons, as it does sound a bit off in the teaser, but that is still unknown.
I'm trapped here at the Pizzaplex, or what's left of it.
The horror DLC didn't predict much more than the gloomy tunnels and scary animatronics, which has already happened, so there's not much to talk about there. But the Choose Your Guardian DLC has a lot to talk about. You may be able to select from the beginning which animatronic you face, and then potentially free them from Burntrap's control, or there could be no player selection and an animatronic other than Freddy helps you by default. But I'll leave that up to you guys in the comments to suggest. But moving on, there were some really interesting details about the trailer I noticed that were overlooked by a lot of people. For example, did you notice that the trailer is from the perspective of both Cassie and Gregory, based on the 2 different hands we can see at different points? This most likely means we will have a back and forth story between the 2 as we play from both perspectives in order to escape. Another cool feature we see very briefly is from the camera arrays. Hidden in the corner is a button labelled intercom, which I suspect is used for luring animatronics to certain places, like in FNAF 3. It is actually an idea I had at the very beginning of this series, but not in the same way. In the first episode I said, Chica could use her voice box to attract animatronics away from you like in FNAF 3. As I was covering in the video, I thought it would be most likely to be used in the Guardian DLC, but I'm still happy I predicted a feature like this, just because I think it's really cool. It made FNAF 3 very different from the other games in the series for its mechanics, and would be awesome to see implemented with all the possibilities that come with free roam. That being said, avoiding the animatronics was way too easy in Security Breach. I mean, like, way too easy. So either limiting the mobility of the player or using tighter areas would be necessary for this to have any actual functionality. Another very new feature is having Vanny's mask to see secrets or paths in the Pizzaplex. This is a really nice touch, as it may open up new areas and attractions to explore, potentially including the level 9 and 10 doors that were barred before. The biggest question, however, is who is at the end? Well, I don't have the answer, but notice that the character has 5 fingers, which was a very important point for Security Breach. So this basically guarantees this is either Afton, Bonnie, or possibly Vanny if she somehow survives, although we are seen to use her mask, so that wouldn't make much sense. If the DLCs I mentioned sound interesting to you, there's a playlist of 4 other videos about them just down below, so check them out if you want. I also have a tendency to make sequels to these videos, so feel free to drop any ideas you might have about the Ruin DLC in the comments, and subscribe to catch the next video, as I might make another going into your ideas specifically. But for now, that is everything the community predicted about Ruin DLC over a year ago. I hope to see some new announcements soon that we can hopefully look at more predictions we've had, and thank you so much for watching. Now, if you've been a subscriber for over a year, you might be wondering about the gap in uploads. For the past year, all my work has been put into this. Freddy's 1, the game that took the indie horror platform by storm in mid-2014. It drew the attention of a rapidly growing YouTuber named Mark. A Five Nights at Freddy's video unlike any I've done before. But the project became so much larger than expected and took so much longer than I wanted it to. As a break, I've taken on a different project about Minecraft at the start of this year, which has taken about 5 months. But I'm hoping to release both videos this year, mainly because I've been really wanting to make content again, so this video is hopefully the first step in that. I just wanted to add this somewhere to anyone who is interested, and if you are, feel free to subscribe to see how these videos turn out in future, and leave a comment if you're excited. But thanks for listening and for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.